thank you for bringing the slides up on the screen. So I'll start by just acknowledging the country that I'm on today, which is Ngunnawal country, and paying my respects to the traditional custodians of that country, and extend that respect to any First Nations people that may be with us on the call today. Like Joe said, if you switch to the next slide, we have started the development of Australia's sustainable finance taxonomy. We've started with climate mitigation, but are developing a framework for a full holistic sustainable finance taxonomy. We're working in partnership with the Australian government. So we're and that came off the back of the process that New Zealand is just about to embark on, which was a pretty comprehensive scoping phase of work to look at what the key design elements are. So on the next slide, really what we figured out through our process, and I'm sure, and listening to the Minister's words this morning, I think we'll come to a pretty similar conclusion as part of your work, is that really what we're seeking to do in developing a taxonomy or country-specific taxonomy is that we want to drive capital. So we want to ensure private finance can channel its capital towards the activities that are actually going to help us to get to our climate and actually more broadly sustainability goals within the time and in the speed required. Importantly, and I think it's a flip side of the same coin, is really what a taxonomy can do, and I think Matteo articulated it beautifully, is that constitutional document, is it really can improve the quality of market information to ensure that we all know what we're talking about when we're talking about sustainability, that we understand the dynamics, we understand the complexities, but we can actually make rational decisions, and that this actually brings an element of maturity to finance markets and can counter the rise of greenwashing and ensure transparency. So these are the two key purposes of Australia's taxonomy, and those are crystallized in the terms of reference that we now have with our climate working group of our Council of Financial Regulators, who's working with us and overseeing Australia's taxonomy, and it's sort of our North Star as we develop it. This is the purpose that we're trying to achieve. So on the next slide, this purpose is also really crystallized in our core principles. So we have 4 key design principles that we are following in the development of our taxonomy. And again, that was really, we identified these principles as part of the scoping phase of work that we did in the initial development. But credibility is absolutely key. And I think that goes without saying. But credibility means a lot of different things. I mean, of course, credibility means it must be science-based. We're trying to get to the outcome. We're trying to achieve our Paris Agreement commitments, including trying to keep global temperatures to 1.5 degrees. Credibility also means understanding and looking at the latest technological developments. And so being really informed by the science and technology, being transparent about the information we're using, being very clear about how activities will be included in, so eligibility for inclusion in the taxonomy, and of course using quite understood and well accepted, universally accepted concepts like technology readiness levels, etc., to really give people clarity about what we're doing and why we're crafting criteria in the way that we are. The second one is interoperability, and I think that again goes without saying. We understand the global capital dynamics, but we have unique circumstances that each country has, but ultimately we are all trying to achieve the same goal, and capital knows no borders, particularly between Australia and New Zealand, and so interoperability is key, and it's really encouraging we've been working very, very closely with Jo and her teams, but we'll continue to at both, I think, at the officials level and through the different layers to ensure that, particularly across the Tasman. Usability, and some people get quite confused about this concept, but it is not saying that now we're going to make a taxonomy so that everybody can demonstrate that they are aligned. If that was the case, then that would mean that we wouldn't need a taxonomy. But what usability really does is actually provide information that is usable to the market so that they can really understand what they need to do and how they need to allocate that capital. And then, of course, prioritization, which is key. Like, we want to prioritize in order to achieve our purpose. So it's really prioritization for impact. And what that has done is guided the priority sectors. It's also guided our approach to transition. And what we want to do is prioritize everything we can in the taxonomy in order to help us achieve that goal of channeling capital to the areas where it's needed most. So in terms of that sector prioritization, we've got 6 priority sectors that have been signed off at the Council of Financial Regulators oversight as part of their oversight role. Those 6 sectors are priorities for Australia because they make up the bulk of our emissions. They also are key areas of investment for the Australian finance sector, and they really are where we can get our biggest bang for buck in terms of helping to drive that transition. Those 6 priority sectors are also areas where the Australian government are themselves developing sector decarbonisation plans for. And the hope is that they will be very complementary so that private capital can channel to the activities that are also helping to drive the decarbonisation aligned to the government's decarbonisation plan. So really, I guess, what I just really wanted to focus on is, I guess, the key differences with other jurisdictions, and also a little bit about, and that goes a little bit to the why we're picking these priority sectors. You know, I think, like I said, interoperability is one of the key principles. So we are not choosing difference for the sake of difference. We are seeking alignment wherever possible. But there is a clear recognition, and I think this is not true only of Australia, it will be true of New Zealand and true of every other country, that you have to take account of the country's specific circumstances. That includes the makeup of the economy. And in Australia, although we have quite significant infrastructure, real estate asset base, and a strong services economy, we are also very much exporters of primary goods. So we are miners, we are net exporters of agricultural produce. And I picked those 2 out particularly because those are 2 areas that haven't been covered in many other taxonomies and in EU and other places. And in fact, Australia is really charting the way in developing criteria for sustainability criteria for mining minerals and metals. And I think for New Zealand, equally, you will need to look at the structure of your economy and pick the areas where you know it's really going to cater to what you need. For the built environment, again, of course, we all have buildings, we all have a real estate market, and many places that this is where capital flows into between different jurisdictions. But there are local conditions, there are building codes that are local, there is the scale and speed of the decarbonisation of the grid is a little bit different, metrics are a little bit different. So it's really in making sure, and this goes to that principle of usability, that we're developing something that is relevant and usable to the markets that we're in. And this is why localized taxonomies are so important and most effective when they are catering to that local market, but then also rolling up to that interoperable achievement. I will just touch on, and this is my last slide, and really I think builds beautifully off the presentation that Yuki just gave us. And this is the importance of transition. And, you know, transition, I think she rightfully pointed out, is a term that is increasingly in use, and really people are starting to look at it, but it's not necessarily being used as a labeled instrument yet, because there is still a lot of confusion and uncertainty about what it means, and in some instances, what we're trying to achieve. And so the guidance that GFANZ and others have been putting out, and some of the good work that jurisdictions across ASEAN and Canada are thinking about the transition and what that means, and how we can actually start to channel capital towards that transition to get to our end state, is something that ASFI really drew on as part of putting together its transition methodology. So this methodology that is before you really is a crystallization on our communication of how we will be looking at transition. And we're really looking at it as part of a future state. We're looking at where we need to get to, so that concept of transitioning towards something, and then what are the key investments that we need to make to help us to get there. So there are, I guess, two key phases of transition. You're either transitioning away from something or you're transitioning towards something. We really recognize that there is, and this is where the GFAN's guidance and some of the work that's been done in many ASEAN jurisdictions around how we actually phase out activities and best practice around that, that really focuses on the transition away. This methodology is really looking at how we can channel capital towards activities to decarbonize them from within to enable that they are aligned with a net zero post 2050 economy. And so what we're really looking to do is pick those activities that are absolutely still have a role in net zero 2050 economy. So that means that they don't have low alternatives, where they can, even if it's not economically feasible right now, be decarbonized so that it fits into that post 2050 economy, and ensuring always that we are mitigating the risk of locking in future assets, future high carbon assets. Because we're running out of time, and many activities across the economy are actually going through their asset replacement cycles right now. And so active choices about what to do and what to invest in at a capital level is happening right now. And what we really want to do is ensure that any activity and any new investments that are being made that will probably still be around in 2050 are investments that have not locked in high carbon. And so for us, it's very important that transition actually gets us to that end state. So just closing off is timing. We're going to be going out for consultation on the first three sectors. That's the built environment, electricity, and mining sector in May of this year. And we are really looking forward to remaining in close collaboration and contact with New Zealand as they go through their initial scoping phase, and hopefully start getting going in the future soon on some development of some of their sectors. So thank you very much, Joe.